What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now Plus. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about The Last of Us Season 2 over on HBO. So Season 1, obviously just ending yesterday, did my review, and, we'll be back at it for sure when Season 2 starts, and it's definitely going to be a little bit different that time around. But there's obviously a lot of things that are going around online, right? These kind of quotes that people are taking, and a lot of information for what Season 2 is going to be. The biggest one of it being that Season 2 is not going to be the entirety of Part 2, right? The game Part 2 most likely is being split up into 2 seasons. So, there's kind of different ways of reading it or whoever said it. What's interesting to me, at least, is back at the premiere, I think, like when they did their red carpet thing, they hinted very strongly that, if we continue, the second game is going to have to be split up. Like, we're not going to be able to do it all in one season. So it shouldn't be all that shocking, which people, I think, are making it kind of shocking for no reason, that the next season is not going to be the entirety of Part 2, which makes a lot of sense. So that's the biggest thing, right? That probably Part 2 is being split up into 2. Now, the question is, how do you do that, right? I think one of the quotes going around is they are going to explore Joel and Ellie's relationship post, the ending of the first game. But here's what's interesting. In the second game, they do that. So I don't know if the show or the showrunners, all this stuff, I don't know if they're saying they're going to do more of it or it's going to be in a different order, or if they just mean, well, those parts of the game are going to be in the show. Because there's plenty of scenes in the second game that are from, in between 1 and 2. So I don't know how much to read into that. The other thing, though, the big one, I would say, besides it being split up, is they talk about the differences between the game and the show. And I believe this was Craig who had said this, that some things are going to be 1-to-1. It'll be extremely similar. Some things, they're going to be, I believe the word was, radically different. So they're going to radically change some parts of the game to make it the show. So here's where I stand on this, all right? Here's where I stand on this. I'm actually way more okay with it than you may think I am. What have I been running on for a long time with these adaptations? Stick with the source material, okay? Stick with that source material. With that being said, when it comes to Part 2, and maybe this is a hypocritical, and that's fine. If you want to call me a hypocrite, whatever. When it comes to some of the major decisions, and I'm not saying they're going to change the Joel thing, because ultimately Joel is going to die by the hands of Abby, maybe with a golf club, maybe not. Maybe they changed that. Maybe they think that was something that people really, really didn't like, and not the overall thing. I don't know. But I do think the general idea stays. I do think Joel dies in a similar way, okay? But I would say the way that I'm reading into it, there's better ways to do it. Now, I'm not here to tell you that my way is the best way or it's my way or the highway, but I had always said, I think if you just simply switch up the order of The Last of Us Part 2 or do a little extra stuff with Abby, and I'll explain in a second, I think you make that game better. I really do. Now, again, I'm not saying that that's the best way of doing it. It's, again, my way or the highway. If you're going to radically change the game, why would you do that? So, my first thing would be that they know they can do it better. And that's being fair to them while being I think that's kind of taking maybe the best approach to it, right? Because you can go into it just kind of bowing down to them and saying, the games are the best and the show's the best. You can also go into it saying second game is complete trash, and you can go into it either way. I'll kind of go right down the middle and say, and I've always said this, I enjoy quite a bit about the second game. I really don't like the story beats and the decisions that they made, but I do think changes here and there could absolutely help. So if their plan is to radically change certain parts of it, again, I'm not saying the main thing, but how you tell it. Can you give us a little bit of perspective? And my main example, can you give us the Abby perspective first? Now, I don't necessarily think they're going to do that, but just by kind of leading into her and her dad, and then, starting there before you get to her killing Joel. That's basically where I'm at. I think if you showed Abby, and you showed Abby with her dad, which there are those scenes in the game, and you did that stuff first, and that led into her coming into the hospital and seeing her dad, all that stuff. If you did that, I think that would help the audience side more. Now, I do think there's still some kind of fundamental flaws with the game, in that Abby is just not likable, even when they try to make her likable. Then they have other characters tell you that Abby is not likable. So I do think there's actually like fatal flaws written into the game for whatever reason. Again, I'm not here to bash it completely. I'm also not here to bow down to it, though. So that's just what you get with me. So I would say that. I would say, you're going to have to either change that or you're going to keep it, and you're just going to accept, for me, my opinion, the second season's not going to be as good as the first. The third season isn't going to be as good as the first because the second game is not as good as the first game. That's my personal opinion. I don't even think the second game is close to the first game in the story and the characters. Everything else I think is a lot better, but those two things I think are worse. So that's where I'm at. There's other kind of details. Filming, obviously, this year has been rumored. I think it probably films right sometime in the fall. The theory is that the second season maybe comes out in like 2 years, so like around this time, 2025. I think that makes sense because you can do, season 2, you do season 3, maybe like a year or so later, and then by that point, you're looking probably pretty good to get the third game out and then make the third season. So that's obviously like a loose timeline that, some of it is just my creation on the spot, but I think that kind of works. But those are easily the biggest two things. I think splitting it up is definitely a good idea, because if you can make one game into 18 episodes instead of 9 or, whatever, you're just giving it more time to breathe. Again, I do think things are going to have to change, but going back to my point, it's odd, maybe, for some people that have been with me for so long. I've always said, with that adaptation stuff, stick with it. Don't be radical. Actually, don't radically change it, things like that. I guess that's only when it's like quote unquote good, in my opinion. But again, I do think some of the themes and some of the stuff that happens in the second game story-wise is good. It's just order, and it's just, again, like the Abby thing in particular. The two biggest issues, I would say, with the story of 2, controversially, is that the order is wrong, in my opinion. I think if you change up the order, you can help Abby's character. And then I also just think Abby is not nearly as likable as Neil Druckmann thinks she is. That's just flat out what I think. And so, again, you either do it and you accept whatever happens with this, and maybe it's better in the show, maybe it's not. People are going to have whatever opinions they want, or you change it, and it's the same thing. People will have their opinions or they won't, right? So that's where I stand. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Make sure you're all subscribed, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.